Good morning and welcome to Rising. Welcome back from what was a great weekend for me. Hope it was a great weekend for you. Was it a great weekend for Niall?
It was a fantastic weekend, Robbie. Yes, always a pleasure. Unusually social for sociable by my hermetic standards. How about you? Did you have a good time?
Yes, number of birthday parties to attend, and it was quite nice weather in the district, and I actually went golfing, if you'll believe it or not. I love golf. I'm terrible. I don't golf that often, but I did go golfing this weekend. It was a lot of fun.
I didn't realize you played any sport at all, other than your scooter. So that was scooting around.
My sport is arguing with you.
Exactly, yes. as it should be. So coming up on Rising, we will recap the No Kings protests that gathered millions of people across the country and how President Trump responded.
Plus, former Congressman George Santos is already making the media rounds after he was freed from prison. We'll see what he has to say about Trump commuting his sentence.
And the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal is on shaky grounds after Israel accused the organisation of violating the agreement and launched strikes into Gaza as a result. But before we get to any of that, Robbie, what is on your radar?
Now, a lot of foreign policy to go over today. We're going to start with Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was in Washington, D.C. on Friday, but came away empty-handed as President Donald Trump declined to promise that the U.S. would supply Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. And let's be clear, Trump was absolutely right to do so. Now, while Russian President Vladimir Putin is exhibiting concerning signs that he will not agree to peace with Ukraine at all and wants to conquer the entire country, we simply cannot take the most extreme option until we are absolutely certain that peace is not on the table. So let me say that once again. Trump is right about this, and Trump is proving that he is the peace president. He's proving that with the Middle East, which we will turn to later during the show. And he's trying to prove it with Russia-Ukraine as well. His instincts to wage peace rather than war are morally correct and politically popular and represent a refreshing break from the bipartisan foreign policy consensus. As someone with Trump's instincts had been leading the U.S. in the 90s, the aughts, and the 2010s, as America accrued foreign policy blunder after foreign policy blunder, and actually created the conditions for Putin's horrific invasion of Ukraine, well, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess. But we are in this mess, and now the question is, what should we do about it? Trump has engaged in Herculean negotiating efforts to bring Zelensky and Putin to the table. His efforts have worked on Zelensky, who now has a far more realistic outlook about the likely end of the war, a negotiated settlement. The Biden administration, unfortunately, had convinced the Ukrainian government that U.S. support would be unlimited and that we would defend every inch of Ukrainian territory from Russian invasion. This was, of course, completely absurd. It was always the case that the Ukrainians did not have a plan to eject Russia from their land entirely. Neither Zelensky's military advisors nor U.S. military advisors thought this outcome likely at all. All along, the plan should have been to defend Ukraine, yes, but get a peace deal on the table, one that probably wasn't going to be ideal for Ukraine, the weaker party, but would leave the rest of the country intact. Now, Trump has gotten Zelensky there, which is good. But Putin has proven to be extremely stubborn, and despite appearing to favor negotiations and peace talks, well, he keeps delaying the actual end of the war, which does raise the unfortunate possibility that he's really not interested in peace at all. He wants to take the rest of Ukraine. And if that's how it's going to be, then that's how it's going to be. And there's no reason not to sell Ukraine weapons and the means to defend themselves. Russia wants a war, they'll get a war. But I, for one, still think we should make one last effort to avoid that outcome. Because Tomahawk missiles, which would theoretically allow Ukraine to hit targets within Russia, that runs the risk of drawing the U.S. directly into this conflict. What if Russia perceives a Ukrainian attack on the homeland, an attack managed with U.S. weapons, as an act of war on the part of the U.S.? Do we really want to be at war with Russia over the fate of a nation we have no special obligation to defend? Of course not. That's why Trump was right to ultimately call off plans to provide the Tomahawk missiles to Zelensky. In a long and apparently tough meeting on Friday, Trump informed Zelensky he wasn't ready to provide the weapons just yet and wants to wait to meet with Putin in the next 2 weeks, likely in Budapest, Hungary. That stance is tough but smart. Here was Trump addressing the matter in an interview with Fox News over the weekend.
We can't give all of our weapons to Ukraine. We just can't do that. And I've been very good to President Zelensky and to Ukraine, but we can't give, if we're going to be short, I don't want to do that. I can't jeopardize the United States.
You're correct, Mr. President. If we are going to arm Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles, we have to be absolutely certain that peace is not something Russia is interested in. President Putin, the ball is now in your court. You should accept the peace deal that ends this war and commit to engaging in no further aggression against Ukrainian territory that remains in Ukrainian hands. And if he's unwilling to do that, then you will see a very different side of the U.S. and of Trump. We want peace, but if we can't have peace because of your obstinacy, then okay, you're going to get escalation and you're going to get war. Before it comes to that, take the deal.
Well, I agree with some of that, and some elements we have differences on. You know, look, I think the fundamental difference we have is that I believe more strongly than you do that the US does have vital interests at stake here, in the sense of deterring Russia from further aggression toward its neighbors or expanding its power. In relation to the Tomahawk missiles, I would argue that he should actually have provided the Tomahawks, because the dynamic that you, I think, correctly outlined, where Putin is reluctant to make peace, is partly because Putin sees time as being on his side. And the longer it goes on, the more he can roll through, the more American support for Ukraine will weaken, the more even perhaps European support for Ukraine will weaken. So therefore, you have to change a dynamic, to my mind, where Putin simply plays for time or believes time's on his side. And the Tomahawks would be one way of doing that. I do take the point that there is a danger of escalation. I think that's obviously the downside to it. But you have to do something to stop a pattern of defeatism, really, where the US is just like, well, we can't really afford to do this forever, so would you like to make peace, Mr. Putin? And Mr. Putin realizes that he doesn't have to make peace. He can just keep going so long as the US desire to help Ukraine gets more and more depleted.
I am just so concerned about taking that step with the missiles that I want to give it one more shot. You have part of Ukraine. It's not really on the table for that to be returned. We got Zelensky to begrudgingly concede that there's going to be a territorial concession. This is the best deal I think Ukraine can possibly get, and and Putin should take it. And if he doesn't take it in this next meeting, if we really don't have any significant drawdown in the fighting, then yes, we should give them the missiles. I agree. I just don't want to do it, not that we're doing it in a hasty way, but the danger of escalation is very real. These weapons could allow that Ukraine is enthusiastic about the prospect of hitting Russian targets inside Russia to change the calculus. And I hear you about delaying, but another 2 weeks is not going to fundamentally alter the trajectory of the war. So let's have one more meeting where Trump is polite, but tough and firm with Putin, that if they really give us no choice, then we're going to supply the Ukrainian defense. Mm-hmm. If it's really they want to take the whole country, then they're going to have to fight for it, and it's going to be horrific and bloody, and thousands more Ukrainians will die, and Russians. So one hopes that cooler heads will just prevail and Putin will decide not to go that route, because we are going to make it more costly for him.
Well, I hope we are if it comes to that. I think that level of firmness or strength that you're hoping to see from Trump isn't something that I think he has shown in face-to-face discussions or talks with Putin, including in Alaska, where I think Putin clearly emerged as the sort of strategic or moral victor of that, because he got what he wanted, the pomp and ceremony, without making any concrete concessions.
Well, he's going to get missiles soon if there isn't more movement on the peace front. Next up, the No Kings protests were in full force this weekend, and President Trump did a little bit of trolling of his own. We'll be right back with more of that.